Hey guys, Ryan Fowler with InnerMasculine.com. We have an oopsie. Hold on just a second. Uh, okay, I hope it's not repeating. Okay, here we go. Ryan Fowler with InnerMasculine.com. We got another great show for you. I need to fix something real quick here. We are going to talk about one of the most common mistakes people make that royally screws them up. And what that mistake is confusing your intrinsic value with your success, with your ability to, or not your ability, but what you actually do get, whether you actually do succeed. You know, how physically fit you are, how good looking you are, how wealthy you are, what kind of skills you have, what other people think of you. The majority of humans confuse their intrinsic worth with that. And it causes huge problems. Now, I'm going to make the argument that in reality, you can bring arguments for or against whether or not we have intrinsic value. I think the evidence favors that we do have intrinsic value. But what no one can argue is that as far as belief systems, if you believe you don't have intrinsic value, or if you believe your value depends on whether you succeed or fail, have value, good looking, what others think of you, etc. All these outward things, as a belief system, that's a terrible belief system. And honestly, at the end of the day, if you adopt a belief system that actually leads you to cause more harm to the world, leads you to feel bad about yourself, leads you to be less useful, or maybe leads you to chase success to this extreme degree and still be miserable inside, and maybe hurting others in the process, living a life completely out of whack because of that. It's a bad belief system. So we're going to examine that. We're going to examine the life of Marilyn Monroe. I'm going to show a part of a Tom Bilyeu clip I played before, but just a part that ties into this. Don't confuse your actual value, your actual self-esteem, how you feel about your worth as a person. Don't confuse that with temporary success. Success can come and go. There's people made $1 billion, lost $1 billion, you know, and equating your success with being successful. And some people feel terrible inside, and then they say, I know I'm going to become successful, and then I'll feel good, and it doesn't work. That's Marilyn Monroe. So confusing your number one, believing you don't have intrinsic value is a terrible belief system. That's toxic shame. It causes all sorts of problems, as I demonstrate over and over and over and over again on this show. But equating your value with your outward success also causes problems. I believe we should adopt the belief systems that serve us best and get them in our core. And I'm going to show this today and just amply show that equating your value with your success is just a terrible idea. So before I do that, you'll notice in the bottom left of the screen, InnerMasculine.com free-ebook. Just go to that link there, InnerMasculine.com free-ebook. You can get an ebook on how our subconscious mind works. These belief systems I'm talking about right now, at the core, they're in our subconscious mind. And at the core, you know, Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious or the subconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And the truth is 95% of our behavior is directed by the beliefs in our subconscious mind. That's just straight up neuroscience. So if you want to understand what's really going on in your subconscious, now's your chance, because it's 30-page ebook, pretty quick read, but it no fluff, just gives you all the good stuff. You can see it right here, table of contents right here. It's going to show you what's going on. Hey, are you self-sabotaging, or are you procrastinating? Are you not able to pull the trigger? You see that attractive girl? You can't pull the trigger, can't attract her. Why not? Well, your subconscious is at work. What's it doing? Why? Why is it doing that? Why is it holding you back? Why does it keep you stuck? Why do you feel sad? Why do you feel happy? You know, all of these things are coming from your subconscious mind. So this will explain the blueprint and what's going on. It's no cost at all. Just go to InnerMasculine.com /free-ebook. Pop in your email. You'll get it. I think I have it automated set up now. And by the end of the week, the landing page says you're on a waiting list. You're actually not now. So that should all be fixed within the next 2-3 days. But go there. And by the way, there is at the end of the ebook, there's a way to get a free 30-minute consult with me. If you have questions about belief systems, subconscious mind, you don't feel good enough, you don't believe in your ability and value, you can actually get a free 30-minute consult at the end of the ebook. It tells you how. No cost, no obligation. So we're talking about our intrinsic value. I wrote something out. Show start a little later today because I spent some time writing something out that I'm going to show you the pros and cons as do we have intrinsic value or not. And so let me add that to the mix here. Let's look at it. Are we intrinsically valuable? Well, let's say reasons why not. Well, people are common. They're everywhere. So if you're common, maybe you're not valuable. You know, dirt's common too, right? People consume resources. So are we valuable if we're just consuming? Well, some people do much more harm than good in the world. So can you say everyone's intrinsically valuable if some people do much more harm? They come into the world and they leave a train wreck, right? Many people live mediocre lives. So maybe these are reasons why, you know, I'm playing devil's advocate here. And actually the answer I came up with is, you'll see, I think it's kind of interesting. This is my personal belief system. And then we'll go into what you should actually believe. Right now, we're making an argument for, in reality, are people intrinsically valuable? Well, here's why not. A lot of people are mediocre. Some do more harm than good. We're common. We consume resources. That's not a net benefit. Well, here's why you can say we're intrinsically valuable. Some people do amazing things and contribute greatly to society. Now, as an overall net, I think the evidence is in favor that humanity is a net benefit because we've advanced technologically. If your average human was a net negative, then number one, we'd probably be extinct. Number two, we'd still be in hunter-gatherer Stone Age times, these tribes. But something about humanity has caused us as a whole to advance, have incredible technological advances, and become the dominant species on this planet. I don't think anyone debates that. So we must be doing something right. Now, I'm not saying humanity's perfect at all, but I think the evidence is there. We've made a lot of civilization, technological process. And honestly, we still have war and many terrible things, but there's a much smaller percentage of people in poverty and extreme poverty now than any other time in history. There is, there's on the whole, there's much less violence. It used to be in hunter-gatherer times, people would argue and kill each other. Now there's laws against that. And now usually people don't do that. And usually people don't even involve physical violence at all. So you make an argument that if humans are a net positive and we're progressing and advancing, then your average human who contributes to that has intrinsic value. Now, one thing I think is really interesting, each of us has a brain. Our brain is the most complicated object in the known universe. We also have consciousness. So earlier when I said, well, people are common, well, in the relation to the vastness of the universe, having the most complicated object in the known universe, you see a Mercedes-Benz, is a Mercedes-Benz valuable? And you say, oh, it's this wondrous machine. And it's like, yeah, but our brain is infinitely more complicated than that. So by that measure, each of us having this most, and that doesn't even include all the other complicated systems in our bodies. We really are an engineering marvel that we can't recreate, except not technologically. We can have sex and have kids, but we are the most complicated object in the known universe. We are advancing humanity as a net positive. Violence is down. Poverty is down. We're making progress. So the average person must, on the average, be contributing to that. Otherwise, we wouldn't progress. In relation to the vastness of the universe, we truly are actually not common at all. From everything we can tell, we're actually extremely rare. So, and we humans, as a species, are able to exist indefinitely. As a species, we're potentially immortal, unless an asteroid hits and wipes us all out. But hey, maybe by then we've colonized 50 other planets, so we're good. Now, here's the thing, though. Here's a real kicker in bold print at the bottom. Now, I think it was yesterday, I showed a Dan Pena clip, and he said something very important. Dan Pena, worth $500 million, and his mentees, the people he's trained, have a combined net worth of over $1 trillion. He is the most successful entrepreneur and wealth trainer in history, and he said self-esteem is the basis of all high performance. Now, this is very, 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 very important, and this is going to lead into my conclusions as to whether or not we are intrinsically valuable. Whether someone, now, if you have a person like Elon Musk, I think people would argue that he's a very valuable person. Not only his high net worth, but his mission is to save humanity. That's why he's doing Tesla electric vehicles, trying to make, technology that's cleaner overall. And yeah, you can argue that in some ways, all the battery technology that's required, it's like in some ways causing pollution, but as a net, it's moving towards cleaner and cleaner energy. You look at SpaceX, he wants to colonize Mars. So he's all about saving humanity, saving the human race. People believe, I think it's pretty obvious that someone like him has value, that there are people who have value that are contributing greatly. Now, we're going to talk later about separating the value of what you do from your intrinsic value. Because, for example, Mercedes-Benz, you say it has value, and it's like, well, it's because you can drive it. But at the same time, if you don't have any gas in the tank, does it still have value? Well, if you get gas, yeah. Or you can use it for other purposes. The leather's fine, etc. The interior is very nice. So there are some aspects of something. A diamond has no use, but it's incredibly valuable. So there are some aspects of intrinsic worth not tied to usefulness. I do think they're tied together to a point. I think potential is a massive part of intrinsic value. So we're going to go into that. But what you want to see here, number 5, whether someone is like Elon Musk doing a lot of good, or Dahmer, a serial killer who does a lot of bad, whether you contribute greatly to society or you live a mediocre life, or whether you live a bad life or a destructive life, it depends on your core beliefs. At the end of the day, what you do, good or ill, depends on your core belief system. And that's where Dan Pena comes in. Self-esteem, high self-esteem, love of yourself, believing you have intrinsic value is the basis of all high performance. Play it, watch my show yesterday. Believe in your ability and value. So here is the conclusion. We are actually quite rare in the context of the universe, so that's an argument for having value. We all have the most complicated object in the known universe, our brain, not to mention the complication of the rest of our body. Immeasurable, and it has immeasurable potential. We don't know the limits of our human brain and human progress because we're still progressing. We don't know where the limits are as a species, and each of our brains can contribute to that. Now, although our brain and consciousness has massive potential, our actual contributions to the world emerge according to the degree we believe in our intrinsic value and ability. Back to the Dan Pena quote. And I've had so many other people say, talking about belief in this show. So I'm just doing Dan Pena today because I did it yesterday. And because he's such a great appeal to such a profoundly successful guy, he knows what he's talking about. If you believe in your ability and value, that is the marker of high performance contributing to society. Same thing with Tony Robbins. Talked about Tony Robbins' belief system. The secret to get to living is giving, and how that leads to abundance, to be useful to the human race. But that is a belief system. So if you have that belief system, then the success, the usefulness comes. Now, there's many ways to measure success. Don't just judge it by money. Martin Luther King Jr. was not worth $100 billion gajillion dollars, and yet he had a profound effect on society. Same thing with Martin Luther back in, the Reformation, profound effect on society at that time. And I would argue for the better. I don't believe in the specific ideology he professed. But, there are different ways to measure success. You can raise successful, healthy children, and then for the next 20 generations, you have a healthy family line. So many different ways to measure success. But at the end of the day, I argue we have value to the extent we believe we have value. Because if you believe you have value, you go out and you kick ass in life. It's what Dan Pena said. Self-esteem is the basis of all high performance. Now, you can actually argue that, well, maybe we have souls and our souls are immortal and all of that. I'm not saying that's not true, but I'm saying an observable fact is if you believe you have value, then you contribute greatly to the world. And you say, well, what about these cripples and everything? It's like, yeah, Sean Stevenson. Google Sean Stevens. He was a cripple. He had bone deformity, in a wheelchair, 3 feet high. Still got married to an attractive lady, became a multimillionaire, got a PhD in hypnosis counseling or hypnotherapy, and blessed the lives of millions. He spoke at Tony Robbins events, just an absolute inspiration to others. So if you believe you have value, and he talks about you got to love yourself, and that's a basis to loving others. Dan Pena talks about that. I think the evidence is overwhelming. We have value to the extent we believe we have value. We're going to have more on that. Your intrinsic value. Now, I'm going to show you some clips. So this isn't just going to be a boring lecture today. We're going to show a Marilyn Monroe clip. We're going to show Tom Bilyeu talking about some stuff. Confusing high intrinsic. But here's the thing. Number one mistake society makes as a whole. Well, I don't know number one, but it's a massive, massive mistake. Extremely common. When people confuse their intrinsic value with whether or not they succeed, it causes all sorts of problems. If you believe your worth is based on how you're doing at the moment, causes massive problems. And there's different ways this gets confused. Now, number one, you think because I believe I have high intrinsic value and therefore automatically I should have high success. These are delusional, entitled people. These are the millennials raised, and everyone gets an award in their class, even the person who finishes last in some competition, right? Then they're trying to say, oh, everyone has value, and then they confuse that with, well, I guess I'm entitled to success. And why aren't I successful? Entitlement delusion. At best, you're super annoying to others, and you're not nearly as smart or talented as you think you are. So if you think because you have high intrinsic value, that means you automatically get high success. At best case scenario, you're an annoying, entitled, delusional person. Worst case would be much worse, because then you can start doing things. Maybe you start stealing stuff or whatever. I think a lot of people who steal, they're poor, they need to survive, and they have other bad subconscious programs. But people who are entitled who can do that too. Not being a net benefit to society because they're not working for the success. They just believe they're owed it. A lot of women are entitled, in certain Western cultures. Not all by any means, but a lot. You see it over and over. It's just facts. Go on Bumble or some dating profile and just look how these women talk. Again, not all, but a lot. Okay. Confusing high success as necessary for high value. I only have value if I'm successful. If I'm average, I don't have value. Or if I'm, if I got an F in a class, I'm a loser. If I fail, I'm a failure. If I succeed, then I have value. And, but there's actually two types. You can have what's called core toxic shame. Core toxic shame is I'm not good enough no matter what. This is Marilyn Monroe, Robin Williams, but these are people who believe they can achieve, but they believe they can get success, and they do more often than not, but they believe they are not good enough. These people will try and get success and often get it, and no matter what happens, they still feel like crap because they have a core belief system. No matter what, I'm not good enough, I'm worthless, I'm useless. This is Marilyn Monroe. We're going to watch that. Robin Williams, Kurt Cobain, Chris Farley. One person OD, the other three self-deleted. They got massive fame, massive success, but they still felt they did not have intrinsic value. The best belief system is I have massive value just for who I am, and I have the ability to learn and grow and practice and acquire skill until I have enough skill to get what I want. That is the number one, by far, best belief system. When you stray from that, it causes problems. So here's one type of the problem here. I can achieve massive success. These people think when they do, then they'll be good enough. But because they have core toxic shame deep down in their subconscious at a level that doesn't change, believing they're not good enough no matter what, they get the success. They still feel like crap. And they're like, oh, man, that was my only plan. It didn't work. It's going to lead to some really bad outcomes. And so we'll come back to this later, but let's go to this Marilyn Monroe clip. So I don't know if this is going to get copyright claimed or struck, or there are going to be no issues. I think there's some music in here. It's about 6 minutes of it we're going to play. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens, guys. So I'm going to be monitoring it, and if it gets yanked, then we'll just stop it. I'm still kind of a newbie figuring stuff out. But here we go. And we're going to learn about Marilyn Monroe and what her life was like. She had everything, but at the same time, she had nothing, or at least that's how she felt. Oh, I don't know if this is the right one. Okay, it's the wrong one. Stop. All right, let's try this guy again. Here we go. All right, let's see what happens. And hopefully it'll let us play the whole thing. We'll see.
Famous face then meets the eye. Welcome to Ms. Mojo, and today we're taking a look at the tragic life of Marilyn Monroe.
What makes you so sad? I think you're the saddest girl I ever met.
First man never said that. I'm usually told how happy I am.
That's because you make a man feel happy.
For this video, we're examining the history of Hollywood's most famous starlet, whose life was over much too soon.
Just one of those things. Go on, tell me some more.
It won't be surprising to learn that Marilyn Monroe wasn't the name she was born with. Her given name was Norma Jean Baker, and she was born and raised in Los Angeles, California, always with the shadow of Hollywood looming over her. For the earliest years of her life, she was raised by her mentally ill mother, Gladys. And though the identity of her father has been speculated, even she never knew for certain who he was, and he never attempted to be a part of her life.
What about it, ladies?
Better not.
By all accounts, Monroe's time spent with her mother was not happy, and
So you're hearing about all this childhood trauma here. Mom had schizophrenia, didn't know her dad, etc.
when Gladys had a breakdown and received a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia, a condition that was poorly understood in the 1930s, Monroe was taken into foster care. She spent the next 10 years of her life shuffled around various foster homes and families, and became incredibly shy after she was abused by her caregivers. Aged 16, she married a sailor and became a housewife, never finishing high school. It was during the Second World War that Monroe got her big break. As part of the war effort, she went to work at a factory and met a photographer, David Conover, who was taking morale-boosting pictures of women at work. After this, she began doing modeling work and was signed to an agency, dyeing her hair blonde and changing her name to Marilyn Monroe to be more appealing.
Oh, do you feel the breeze from the subway? Isn't it delicious?
Marilyn came from Marilyn Miller, a Broadway star big in the 1920s, who was only 37 when she died, a year older than Monroe herself was at the time of her death, while Monroe was her mother's maiden name. Despite maintaining this connection with her mother, who was institutionalized by this point, Monroe's agent made her pretend her mother was dead.
You still mad at me?
I don't understand. People die, and people just standing around. Don't you care?
By 1946, she'd signed to 20th Century Fox, though they didn't think much of her at first. She didn't get one role in the first 6 months of her contract, and spent her days learning about acting rather than actually doing any.
Hi, Evie.
Hi, small change.
Eventually, though, the studios realized they had something special on their hands, and Monroe quickly proved to be a hit at the box office.
Young lady, you don't fool me one bit.
I'm not trying to. But I bet I could.
6 years of hard work later, she'd built up to receiving top billing, starring alongside Jane Russell in the classic Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, which, along with their other starring roles, earned both of them stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
A kiss of the hand may be quite continental, but diamonds are a girl's best friend.
However, Monroe was famously typecast as a dumb blonde, and the studios had such strict control over her public image that people began to believe she was like that in real life.
Did you see this fellow I'm with?
I saw him.
What's he look like?
Very nice for a one-eyed man.
Is that all he's got?
In actual fact, Monroe was very intelligent. She had a large library, held her own against the studios, and tried to shed the dumb blonde image near the end of her life by fighting for more dramatic roles and doing serious interviews. She was also friends with renowned jazz singer Ella Fitzgerald, helping her book shows at the Glitzy Mocambo Club in West Hollywood when the owner initially refused. Fitzgerald said that Monroe was, quote, ahead of her time, and didn't even know it. Despite achieving fame in the early 50s, she was already suffering psychologically at this point, and her acting mentor Lee Strasberg encouraged her to attend psychotherapy.
Well, cheer up. I will. I just hate to fight with anybody. When you win, you lose.
She had many existing mental health problems like depression and anxiety, intensified by the life of a movie star and the pressure she was under. These problems were made worse by substance abuse issues.
I don't want you to think I'm a drinker. I can stop anytime I want to, only I don't want to, especially when I'm blue.
We understand.
All the girls drink. It's just that I'm the one that gets caught. Story of my life.
She was married numerous times, including to big names like baseball icon Joe DiMaggio and famed playwright Arthur Miller. And though she purportedly maintained a friendship with DiMaggio until the end of her life, all her marriages ended prematurely. She also suffered from endometriosis, a physical condition that causes uterine tissue to grow outside of the uterus and on other parts of the female reproductive organs. Endometriosis is incredibly painful, and it led to every pregnancy she ever conceived ending in a miscarriage. As Monroe's career went on, she began to earn a reputation for being difficult to work with, frequently turning up late to set and intoxicated.
Get this stuff a-flowing and make the desert blue.
Well, flow it, flow. We only got the one bottle.
There you are. Put that in your thoughts and see how they come out.
She was prescribed many different medications, including the barbiturates which she ultimately overdosed on in August 1962, found dead in her home in Los Angeles by her housekeeper. But even in death, Monroe hasn't known peace, as conspiracies have swirled around whether she died accidentally, committed suicide, or was even murdered.
Men grow cold as girls grow old, and we all lose our charms in the end.
From being used in Andy Warhol artwork and beyond, Monroe has remained one of the most famous and recognizable people in history, and a legend of cinema, despite her messy life. Her
Okay, we'll stop it there. So, looks like it let me play the whole thing, so that's good. So, here's the thing. You could tell there were complications in her life, like she couldn't have children, etc. But at the end of the day, she struggled with feeling not good enough no matter how much depression, needing to use barbiturates, going to psychotherapy. Yeah, she had some stresses from a demanding career. But there are people who have very demanding careers that handle the stresses, that are resilient, that can take it. Why? Well, it's inner world, it's belief systems. So she struggled her whole life, no matter she married, mistress to the president, married baseball icon, Joe DiMaggio, the playwright, everything else you heard, millions of dollars, everyone adored her. She was a tortured soul her whole life. And it's very tragic. But it came from her childhood. It came, and the Dan Pena clip yesterday, on my show yesterday, self-esteem is developed by 7 years old. You either have it or you don't. Now, the thing he got wrong is we can actually put self-esteem in your core, in your subconscious. But Dan Pena, who's trained more wealthy people than anyone else on the planet in history, he understands you need to have high self-esteem to then how you believe about your value, intrinsic value, and your ability to get what you want. That is what determines 95% of what you're going to do in life, at least at a foundational level. The big moves is what I'm talking about, tied to core identity. I've showed you the identity-based habits. Google identity-based habits. James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, sold 10 million copies. He says what we do is based on who we believe we are. So when it comes to intrinsic value, if you believe you have intrinsic value no matter what, you're going to be resilient. You're going to be tough. You're going to be like Thomas Edison, who had to try 1,000 times and fail 1,000 times before he invented the light bulb, but he kept doing it until he succeeded. The reason he succeeded is because he didn't give up. Other people don't even try, or other people fail and then they feel bad and then they stop. So back to this here, just to kind of show this to you guys. I know this one's kind of academic today, but this is actually really core stuff. Back to this guy here. See if I can, boom, there we go. If there are some people who think a lot of success is going to make them feel good, but they feel terrible inside because of their upbringing. Marilyn Monroe, very traumatic upbringing, no amount of fame. She hit the hypergamous jackpot, got the, most high value men. Doesn't matter. Struggled her whole life because of her self-esteem in her. Outward success didn't help. And she ended up overdosing, whether self-deletion or something else. But what is not up for debate is she had a tortured life. So you look at number 3 here. Some of us have subconscious programs that are not just, I don't have value no matter what. That's Marilyn Monroe, for example. Some of us have programs, when I succeed, I actually do have high value. When I fail, I have very low value, though. And so this is kind of tied to context. So some people, number 2, some number 3 here. The best belief to have is I have value no matter what. I have massive intrinsic value. But if you believe I have value when I succeed and I don't have value when I fail, your self-esteem swings wildly according to these successes or failures. Well, you know what that means? That means anytime you're in a situation in which you could fail, you're going to be terrified of failure. Because if you do fail, now you went from having high worth to being a piece of crap. And anytime our brain sees this potential for pain, our brain is going to say, don't take that risk, because if you fail, your self-worth goes down the toilet. Now you're a piece of crap. That's going to hurt like hell. Don't do it. So now you're afraid of failure. Now you're procrastinating because you don't want to do things that maybe you'll feel bad for not doing it, or maybe you feel bad for doing it and doing it wrong. And so it's fight or flight. Anytime there's potential for pain, including emotional pain, you want to avoid. Self-sabotage, same thing. Get my ebook. It explains all of this. How it feels good to start something, but the closer you get at that finish line where you can be judged whether you succeeded or failed, you don't want to cross that finish line so you can be judged and say, I did fail. It's better just to self-sabotage and say, well, I could do it someday and then I'd succeed. But you don't actually find out whether you succeed or fail. That's less painful than the risk of crossing that finish line, finding out it wasn't good enough. You are a failure. That's terrible. So people self-sabotage before they finish something. If you tie your value to your success, you're going to be like that. You're going to have anxiety. You're going to procrastinate. You're going to self-sabotage. Maybe you'll be a perfectionist. Hey, if I do it perfect, I won't fail. So you're spending a huge amount of time getting things just right, maybe not even ever pulling the trigger. But you could have got 2 times as much, 5 times, 10 times as much done if you weren't such a perfectionist. So now your productivity is way down because it has to be done right. Otherwise, you're not good enough. So if you equate your value with it, whether you succeed or fail, it causes tons of problems. It makes you weak internally. It sets you up for devastation if you do fail. And I have a clip on that. Let's show this. This is Tom Bilyeu. Now, I've shown this one before. This is just a really brief expert. I think I've shown it maybe just once before. Tom Bilyeu used to be a couch potato. He used to sit at home watching TV all day while his wife went to work. Now he's worth $400 million. He started 3 businesses, sold, I think, 2 of them, worth $400 million. Very high net worth guy. He had a big internal shift. He's going to tell you what the internal shift is right here. And this directly ties to what I'm talking about, equating your value with whether or not you succeed. I'm just going to play a short portion of this that directly ties to this. These people know what they're talking about. I'm showing you guys the best examples with massively successful people or tragic lives such as Marilyn Monroe. So here we go.
We talk of self-esteem in one of two ways, either as the sole determinant of success or as the ultimate enemy. Most people build their self-esteem around their accomplishments. They feel good.
That's what we're talking about.
Good about themselves if they're making the most money, they're dating the hottest person, or they've built the best product. They get caught in the rat race of validating themselves against the person who happens to be standing next to them. But there's a fundamental flaw with this equation, because when your ego is that attached to your success, it's devastated by your failures. And what the most successful people know is you cannot leave your self-worth in the hands of anyone else. The most successful people get their pride from a different source.
Okay. Now, I slightly differ from Tom Bilyeu as to the answer. He says, base your self-esteem on whether or not you learn. I say, understand you have intrinsic value just for who you are. Because if you have that, then if other people don't approve of you, you still have value. So you really don't care. You care much less. Maybe you care strategically. I need this person to approve of me because I'm doing a job interview and they're the one who hires me. Okay. But it's not an emotional thing. And other than that, everything he said is true. I'll get to some of the comments here too, guys, because wordplay you do have a good question here. Brent Caldwell, my brother from another mother. Thank you, Brent. Regular watcher Jay Lee. Thank you, sir. Cheers to you as well. Wordplay you have a good question here. Oh, well, do you know who Bruce Lipton is? Yes. Bruce Lipton wrote the book Biology of Belief. It's a great book. He understands the subconscious mind. He's huge on the subconscious. He is a biology scientist, and he's huge on this. He used to be miserable. He was successful but miserable. He learned to embrace his intrinsic value on a subconscious level. A subconscious level is just these deep down, what you believe deep down, intuitively, emotionally, at a deepest core level. That's your subconscious core. Bruce Lipton, watch some of his stuff. He talks about the subconscious mind all the time. He talks about our beliefs actually activate or deactivate certain types of DNA in us. So you could have cancer DNA. Your beliefs can activate that or keep it dormant. And they've noticed this. I did a show on trauma, and people with like massive childhood trauma, just emotional trauma, on average, their life expectancy is almost 20 years shorter than normal. And the trauma is tied to these bad belief systems like Marilyn Monroe. I'm not good enough. Toxic shame. All the other stuff. We're talking about all this stuff here. Bruce Lipton's on board. He knows all about that. His book, Biology of Belief, it's a pretty good book. I got where I talk about how our subconscious processes 1,000 times more per second than our conscious. I got that from him. And he's a scientist. He's stating facts. He's not just blowing words. He's not just blowing smoke up our butt. He has data to back everything he says. EC Smooth, welcome to the show, my man. Good friend of mine, EC. You've been reading Bruce Lipton website and interviews. Yeah, so I agree with most of what he says. I think there's a few differences, but overall he's in the know. And he knows like hypnosis, and he in his book Biology of Belief, he advocates this method called Psych K, which is a type of subconscious reprogramming. I actually took the Psych K basic program. I think Psych K is good for, you take a weekend course and now you can, to an extent, fix some things in your subconscious. I think it does that. I think hypnosis and self-hypnosis is more powerful. If Psych K was more powerful, I'll be doing that. I do think it can work, but that is a subconscious reprogramming methodology that Bruce talks about in his book, Biology of Belief. It's definitely a book worth reading, checking out. His website's a good website. Has a lot. He's on the right track. He understands his stuff, and his life is massively better as a result. He's way happier now. He's more productive, more successful across the board. He's doing better. So, and he'll be the first to tell you that. So, going back to this, showed you guys the examples. Oops. How do I get this? There we go. If you believe you don't have value at a core level, no amount of success is going to change that. Marilyn Monroe, Robin Williams, Kurt Cobain, Chris Farley. That's subconscious. If you believe you have value when you succeed, but on the contrary, if you fail, you don't have value, you are like a leaf in the wind. It puts you in an incredibly precarious, incredibly weak position, and it causes a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear of failure, a lot of fear of taking risks. You've seen on other shows I've done, if you don't take risks, you don't learn, you never succeed. Don't have that belief. Don't base your belief about your value on whether you succeed or fail. Thomas Edison had to try 1,000 times to invent the light bulb before he succeeded. If he felt each time he felt, I'm a failure, I'm a loser, he would have given up. I've shown you the science on that in other shows. You know, the TED Talk where there's -5 points if you didn't complete this puzzle correctly, or there were other people where there was no penalty if you didn't complete it correctly. And the people who were penalized gave up almost 2.5 times quicker. So if you attach any sort of pain or discouragement to failing, it makes you want to try a hell of a lot less or not even try in the first place. When you believe you have massive value just for who you are, that failure doesn't affect your value, not being successful doesn't affect your value, not having money, whatever, doesn't affect your value, it actually empowers you to go out and kick ass and then get those things. So believing in your high, and that's what Dan Pena said, the foundation of all high performance is high self-esteem, loving yourself no matter what. And then you don't give a crap what others think about you. Yes, strategically you might, but on an emotional level, if that girl dumps you or rejects you, that you're just like, okay, she just can't see my value. That's her blindness, that's her problem. But we got to get that deep down into your subconscious, not just surface level. Because if your subconscious deep down believes she rejects me, means I'm a reject, you can tell yourself otherwise, but the most powerful force is the belief that's actually down there. So that's what I do all day, every day. I get the worst belief systems out. I put the best into your core. Self-belief in your ability means you keep going through multiple failures. And the truth is, this is one thing that makes humans intrinsically valuable. The more we do anything, the better we get. You just keep going, learning, growing until you get enough skill to get whatever you want. Falling down doesn't reduce your value. If that was the case, Thomas Edison would be low value because he failed more than anyone. But it's when he got that one big success, that's what people remember him for. He's still remembered in history. How many billions of people are not? So he had many more failures than successes. They didn't affect his value. They don't affect yours. You should actually have this belief system in your core. If you do, it changes everything. We have value to the extent we believe we have value. If you believe you have value, no matter what, you are now in a position of power to realize that value. That's the bottom line. We can debate whether or not in reality humans have value. And like I said, here's the cons, here's the pros, in reality. But really, in reality, if you believe you have value, now it's just a matter of time before you are a massive benefit to society and get the success you want. And that success is how you define it. You don't have to be a multimillionaire. Martin Luther King was not, Warren Buffett wealth. I guarantee you Martin Luther King is going down in history more remembered than Warren Buffett, who had way more money, So don't define your value by these things, by money or even influence. Maybe you're just a really good mom or a really good dad. And because of that, you have a clean bloodline, 20 generations of parents and children passing down good beliefs and influencing the human race for generations to come, because belief systems get passed down from parent to child, parent to child. You have good beliefs. You start out with bad belief systems. Maybe you're grown up in an abusive home. You fix it all. You have kids, you pass your belief systems to them, now clean belief systems. And over time, you had 1,000 awesome people in your bloodline who influenced millions over time positively. So you can't just say this guy has value because he's super rich. I mean, it's such a narrow freaking way of looking at the world. Please don't look at the world that way. I think money's great. I like making money, but don't just look at it that way. At the end of the day, if you believe that you have value, that is the number one thing that is going to determine what you do in your life. If you believe you got it, value, then you do have value. That is the bottom line. And there's so much data to back that up. I hope I've demonstrated that today. Watch all my other YouTube. You see people who I've done sessions for, they double their incomes, or now they couldn't even get a girl, and now they have 3 girlfriends. One guy never approached a girl in his life, did one session, 5 months later, had 3 girlfriends. You can't make this stuff up. That audio interview has been on John MLB's show. I'll post the audio interview. It was actually a little more impressive. He did several other things. He was on a sales team of 200. He was second from the bottom. We did one session, interviewed him 5 months later. He's number 7 from the top. So I do think it's great to achieve stuff, but because you're not successful now, don't equate that to your value. It puts you in such a poor place. You have value no matter what. Get that belief system in you. It's only a matter of time before the rest of the world knows it too. So that's our show for today. Thanks, guys, for watching. I hope you've learned something. And I hope you found it a little entertaining as well as educational. But, dude, this is core stuff. I used to have massive manic depression, general anxiety disorder. I was a virgin until I was 30, etc. You guys heard the spiel. Quadrupled my income. Way happier, getting like 49 years old, the best dating life ever. Like, dude, people are jealous of my dating life. Just trust me, man, if you saw it. It took me a while to build all these skills, but once I got the belief, life just got better and better and better and better. But you get the core belief first. You got to have that core belief first. That's the show for today. Put these belief systems in you, and then you're going to learn what I learned, which is you have more power than you know. That's our show. Thanks.